Mm-hmm.
Hello there, and welcome to episode 2 of Pictures Without Pictures. I keep almost calling it Pictures by Pictures, which would make no sense. So I'm glad I've not done that yet. I'm glad I've not fumbled that. With me today is my co-host Reese. Hi Reese.
Hello.
How are you doing? Do you
Hi.
want to sing us in
I'm
for the
good.
theme song which we agreed upon before we started?
Way to put me on the spot.
We did not agree
This
upon
is
a
the
theme
okay.
song.
This is the theme song.
Okay.
That's the theme song.
That's an amazing theme song, I love it. We now have to do that for the next 500 episodes.
No, it will like slowly build into a song. That's what will happen.
So every week we get another clap or another noise.
We get another note. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, I can't wait. What have you let yourself in for? Tony's chest is.
It'll die very quickly.
Tony's chest here on the stream is doing all sorts of things because I've just discovered as we've started talking here, but that's a visualizer. But the reason I haven't been using visualizers is because it can't pick up my mic. So you're just going to get a visualizer for Reese's voice, but that's fine. It's the only voice that really matters anyway in this podcast.
Just means I have to talk more. This is my show now.
we're on Spotify now. That's a thing.
We're episode 2 and it's already becoming a hostile takeover.
Well, yeah. I was counting the episodes. I'm surprised it took this long.
Oh.
Can you believe we're
Anyway.
on Spotify? That's pretty nutty. You can search
fun.
for Pictures Without Pictures on Spotify, and we just show up first result.
Woo!
I found a website, and I'm not sponsored by them in any way, but I am going to give them a shout out because they sorely need our spotlighting, obviously. Because it's a pretty fucking amazing website. It's called Anchor. I talked about this on a video recently, and I said, oh, it's like Anchor, as in, you know, when you're on a boat and you drop the anchor. It's not at all. It's like Anchor as in when you're a news anchor and you're talking about things. That makes far more sense. It's a podcast hosting website in its own. It has loads of tools, including the part I'm worst for, which is I have no idea how to make a fucking logo for anything. And they were just like, here's millions of images to choose from and slap together and make something that doesn't look half bad. So for now, we've got a little logo that I'm pretty pleased with. We look semi-professional, and we are not only on Spotify, we are also on what was it, Radio Public?
Yeah, Radio Public. There were a few other ones.
A few others. iTunes is pending, and Google Play I think is pending. But it's amazing because you just press a button and it does all that shit for you, and that makes me sound old because that's just kind of a way technology works these days anyway. But I'm not Tony Stark. I can't figure all of this shit out, and I was looking into how to get... Thanks, I thought I'd bring it back to the main topic. I thought very smoothly. I was looking into how to make this shit work by uploading it to Spotify, and it was all like... I don't know anything about coding, so I can't even say if it is coding, but it looked codey to me. Like, oh, put, like, there's these brackets and you've got to put this and the name there, and I was like, ugh! And then obviously the website's like, well, no, dude, we'll just do that shit for you. And I was like, oh, it was amazing. Made me very happy indeed.
I mean, it was awesome. It was very cool to find. But Christian,
Yes.
what are we talking about today? To get back on topic.
We're talking about the fact that we have a podcast and it's on Spotify. No, we're talking about the movie Iron Man 2.
That's literally the podcast.
Indeed. No, yeah, it's a podcast about a podcast. I wouldn't put that out of the possibility of something I would make, to be honest. I like making dumb shit like that, but we're not making that. We're making a podcast about movies, and Iron Man 2 is the one we're doing today. Reese, do you remember when you first saw Iron Man 2? Did you see it in the cinema?
I don't think I did. No, I think I didn't. I think it was one of the ones I didn't see in cinema, unfortunately. I definitely saw the first one, but I didn't see the second one. But I remember it quite well. I actually found I remembered this one a lot better than I did the first one. So.
That's interesting. I think the first time I saw any version of Iron Man was when I saw the Avengers. And actually something to note here is that I've been realising as I watched Iron Man 2 that I've seen most of these MCU movies just once.
Yeah.
And I don't remember a lot of them. So even though we're getting into the territory where it's movies I've seen, even though this is mostly a podcast about movies that I haven't seen. It's still not ones that I remember very well or I'm very familiar with. Like, I haven't seen Infinity War more. I might have seen that twice actually, but I've seen Endgame once since it came out. I watched
Endgame twice as well.
I haven't seen the Avengers since it originally came out. So,
both Infinity War and Avengers I went to the cinema twice to watch.
Oh, nice.
So
that's cool. I was in one of those groups.
You were?
Yeah, when back in the day when you could go outside. We didn't talk about
that. You could actually go out and do things.
Yeah. But oh well. Those days are dead. They'll come back one day, it's fine. I remember the reason I saw Iron Man 2, this was before I gave a shit about watching every movie in the MCU, is because I wanted to watch Iron Man 1. And Netflix was like, look how many Marvel movies we have, look at all this stuff. And I went, cool, and I searched for Iron Man. And Iron Man 2 and Iron Man 3 came up, but they did not have Iron Man 1. And I went...
It's the same issue with Captain America. The Winter Soldier was on there, but the first one wasn't.
Yeah, it was so dumb. And I was just like, fuck it. Guess I'll start with 2. I never do this, but that's what I did, I remember. Now that I've seen 1 and 2 together... It sounds weird, but I feel like I didn't miss out on too much starting with 2. Not that, Iron Man 1 is a brilliant film, and I actually think Iron Man 2 is not as good. We'll get into that in a bit. But I think you can pretty much infer the origin of Tony's story through Iron Man 2, and that's pretty much what I did.
Yes. That's something I think that's very good with the MCU in general, and why it's so easily got so many fans, and it's very easy to get into as well, is because it's the worst gate-kept thing ever, in that everything, while it is linked, you can still watch any of the films and not be lost by what's happening.
Yeah. That's very true.
I mean, the context makes it better, but also you can just watch it as a thing, because it does set everything up and be like, oh, this is this character, without obviously being like trying to reintroduce everyone.
That's true. Like
they do it in a way which introduces the characters without being obnoxious, like every time being like, oh, this character, you remember this character, and it's like, yeah.
Yeah, like I have 2 Blu-rays in my whole life, and that's Thor Ragnarok and Infinity War. And I lent Thor Ragnarok to my parents, and I was like, this is one of the best movies ever made. Go watch it. And I didn't even know if they've seen Thor 1 or 2, and I know they haven't seen all of the MCU, but the best part is you don't need to. Like, plot points from the first 2 movies, yeah, your understanding of that movie is better for them, but you don't need them. You can still enjoy it for what it is. And this isn't for Ragnarok, this is Iron Man 2 we're talking about, but it's kind of the same thing. I didn't really think about that till you pointed it out, but a lot of the Marvel movies are very good for just jumping into and enjoying. And I guess that's probably why they've succeeded so well as a mainstream cinema phenomenon, I guess.
The people behind these films are very intelligent, and they've done it in such a way where it is very easy to consume, which is fantastic for getting it out there, and also for people to watch that, you know, maybe aren't able to or have the time to watch every single film, or are not interested in a specific character as well. It's like, sure, that character will pop up later on in the combined film, but yeah, you'll find like a lot of people that watch these films, like a percentage of them definitely haven't watched what you would call, I guess, the origin stories of them.
I think maybe the only time when it's not done so well is they made Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. just slightly too important for season 1, between between Avengers Assemble and Age of Ultron. If you want to know how the staff got from one place to another, that's not explained in any way apart from through the Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. series, but other than that, I think they've done a pretty decent job. But again, those first 2 Avengers movies, haven't seen them in years, so don't really know how important that was. We'll get to it one day.
It's been a hot minute.
It's been a hot decade. It's been a very hot decade.
Yeah.
Oh jeez. Anyway,
for sure.
I tried not to let my existential dread seep into the last episode, so I'll continue doing that now. So I guess getting into the movie, I like how it immediately opens with Tony Stark's "I am Iron Man" speech, recontextualized through the eyes of someone who very much does not like him, very much has a cross to bear when it comes to him, and is in a much less, I guess, privileged state of life, and I just thought it was cool how it just zooms out from the TV and it's like, oh yeah, by the way, we're not we're not there right now. We're over here. I don't know. It was cool.
It's interesting as well that I could talk about this for like next 10 minutes because I'm going to be start talking about camera angles.
Go right ahead.
But the idea is that obviously the original camera angle of that shot is Tony Stark looking down the camera, almost not obviously not looking down the camera because that's poor acting etiquette, but like looking directly or like almost down the camera as he announces, I am Iron Man. This time it's off to the side. Which does allude to the idea that this character that's watching this is off to the side, is almost outcast from this whole thing. So it lends itself to someone who is involved but away from it all. Cool. At least that's the context I understand from it.
I'm glad you brought that up because I totally missed that. That's really cool. It
leads into what you said about it being from a different perspective, and it physically being from a different perspective.
Yeah.
In that the camera angle is entirely different as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love that.
Continue. You were going to say something else about this part.
The only other thing I was going to say about this particular scene is that when his dad's dying, he's saying to his son, Whiplash dude. Is he called Whiplash, by the way? I keep forgetting what he's called.
His character, I believe, is called Whiplash.
Okay.
His actual name, I believe, is Ivan Vanko.
Yeah. Well, I just like how he says to him, that should be you. And last week you were talking about how I should be looking out for the whole I'm not Tony Stark motive. He's not Tony Stark. That should be him, but it's not. And he's not Tony Stark.
He's not Tony Stark in a different way.
Yeah. And I think he's... Again, I don't think he's a particularly amazing villain. You could argue he has... I don't know. Like, his motivation could have been explored more, again, just like Iron Man 1.
Sure.
But the idea you're given is that his dad was ousted from the company because he didn't have the same visions that Howard Stark did, in that he just wanted to make money, whereas Howard Stark was more about inventing, but he just wanted to make money no matter what the ethics were. So you have no real reason to be sympathetic for this villain. I'm not saying that all villains should be sympathetic, but again, because of his motivations aren't explored very much, he's not sympathetic, and he's not explored in a very interesting way, so he's just kind of there.
I think if you think of it that way, then yes, he is very one-dimensional, or two-dimensional, I guess is the phrase. But if you think of it more as it is a story of legacy and continuing that legacy, and to an extent as well, it's about the sins of the father, in that these characters are fighting over something that has arguably nothing to do with them.
Ooh, that's very true.
The whole battle is to do with the people before them. And so it's almost this thing that spanned like a generation, and they feel like because it's part of legacy and it is their legacy that they must take on these sort of, I guess, sins, if I want to keep using that word.
Yeah.
And then continue and allow them to motivate the actions that happen, which it is just an overall theme, I think, because they constantly talk about legacy as well during the film. Legacy this, legacy that. This is my legacy, blah blah blah. And so the very much the sins of the father trope is the legacy for both the characters, until obviously when certain things get developed later on, that changes.
I like how that also leads into the fact that in this movie, I guess I'm jumping ahead a bit, but it's fine. In this movie, it's revealed that Tony Stark is dying. Because the very thing that's keeping him alive... Hang on, I got a quote here somewhere. The thing... Never mind, I can't find it. But basically the thing that's keeping him alive is also killing him. And I think that was really cool, but that also, legacy from what's been passed down to him, but also what is he leaving behind in this world, is very much something that drives him. Not always in healthy ways either, but something that drives him throughout most of the movie.
Yeah. Because he becomes less and less worried about his image as the movie goes on as well, and it's more a case of I think that's part of it as well, and being like he's trying to leave a world where because if he just up and died, then it would be a case of, oh, we've lost a great hero, blah blah blah. But it almost seems like he becomes so self-destructive, like he's almost trying to drive as many people away from him as he can,
so that they don't get hurt when he dies.
It hurts less.
Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah, I
so
caught that.
They don't feel like they've lost this hero or something like that, which is done very well with.
Yeah, how he.
There's a specific reflection when he yells at everyone when in the Iron Man suit, and it made me think of the Ironmonger suit from the first one and how it was portrayed, and it almost like the way it was reflected was angled up, so it looked like larger than life as well, and it looked very sinister. It was very good direction.
You know, when I was watching this, I was patting myself on the back. I was like, I think about things in terms of cinematography, but you always bring up stuff where I'm like, oh yeah. You have a guy for camera angles.
It's just stuff I just love. Like it lends itself to the idea that everything is there for a reason, and so noticing something is like, cool. Why is that there? What is that? What does that
do for the
portray?
movie?
What does that awaken? You know, in your mind, like when you think of that thing. You know, perspective is that. You know, this
is why I love doing this podcast with you, because we think of different things. Or oftentimes the same thing, and we, go, oh yeah. But like, there are so many things you bring up where I'm just like, oh shit, yeah, and it helps me enjoy the movie even more after I finish watching it. It's great.
Yeah. Well, that's why media is fantastic.
Yeah. I'm not fully 100% on this idea, but I feel like this movie, at least in some ways, is meant to mirror the first. Like, you see it in many ways, like for instance how Whiplash, when he builds his when Ivan builds his stuff, it's a very similar building montage to Tony building his stuff in Iron Man 1.
Yes.
And there's a few more things, like when he gets subpoenaed by the lady, it's very similar to that scene in the first movie where that journalist is trying to get an interview out of him as he's getting into his fast car.
Yep.
There's probably a few other things I've missed, but the very fact that War Machine happens in this movie, he's like a mirror of Iron Man. He's in an Iron Man suit, but it's like a different version. Like, what if he went in a different direction and all of this kind of stuff? And also, Whiplash is he tries to make an arc reactor, which mirrors Tony's arc reactor. All this kind of stuff. It's everywhere. It's like parallels.
Yes.
The movie.
There is a very specific shot, going back to shots again, where he is. You remember, when he's banging out the helmet in the when he's first building the suit, the Mark 1.
Yeah.
Where he's banging out the helmet. Exact same scene, with Whiplash, where he's banging something on a thing and he's got his muscles out. It's the exact same thing. Exact same scene shot, exactly the same way.
Yeah. Yeah.
Which it brings the idea that these two characters are the same, effectively. Like, maybe he's not Tony Stark, but he could be. And he is the closest that could ever be Tony Stark.
He's what Tony Stark could be if Tony Stark didn't have his morals. And I think you see that a bit with Justin Hammer as well. If Ivan represents what Tony could be with his inventions without morals, Justin Hammer is his charisma without morals, because you see the way he sells. A lot later in the movie, the way he sells the drones is very similar. Again, with the mirrors, is very similar to the way Tony sells his missile towards the beginning of Iron Man 1.
I think that's more intentional to his character, though. I think he wants to be Tony Stark.
That's
so
true.
He's trying to act that way.
Yeah.
I think that's more towards his character, which makes him an interesting character.
God, he's such a douchebag.
He is a douchebag, and that's the point.
Yeah.
He's supposed to be someone you hate.
Yeah.
Because he's Tony Stark without the charisma.
There's 3 villains in this movie, and he's possibly the most hateable one. I would say the 3 villains in this movie are Ivan, who's Whiplash, Justin Hammer with his drones, and his imitation tech, but also perhaps most importantly, and this happens a lot during Iron Man as a series, Tony Stark himself is the biggest villain to Tony Stark, in how he's destructive with his relationships. Maybe more reasonably in this movie because he's trying to push people away from him because he thinks he's about to die. But even so, the way he destroys his public image by telling everyone to get out in that shot of him in the Iron Man suit, and now he drives his friend to stealing his suit and fighting him in it, which I think ultimately leads to a good friendship there at the end of it. But
one thing. Sorry, Karen.
no, carry on.
I was just gonna bring back. I was just gonna go back to the point you said about Rhodey being in the Iron Man suit to begin with. It's it. I think the idea there is he's pure silver, which
Yeah.
could arguably be white, which is obviously a sign of purity and free from shitty things. And so contrasted to Tony Stark, who is very red and shiny and gold, where he has all these issues boiling up in. And so it almost, in that moment, if you read it that way, it's like he is more worthy of the suit than Tony ever could be.
Yeah, I guess because it's not vain in any way. It's not like red and gold, look at me, flashy. It's more utilitarian in a way.
Yes, and it's the shininess of it could be like, it's almost like a mirror as well, of being like, this is what Tony wants to be almost.
Sure.
This sort of more noble sort of, fighting for in a way without obviously all the toxic traits that he has.
Yeah. I think that's probably why he grows to respect Rhodey so much as well. I think their friendship really happens towards the second half of this film. In Iron Man 1 and the first half of Iron Man 2, he's more of a background character, I feel like. Or maybe not background, but supporting character, whereas especially towards the end of this movie, he becomes so much more of an ally and so much more of an important person in Tony's life that I think he really needs to ground him.
That's the point, is he's a neutralizer. He is he is almost like the alkaline base to Tony's acidic nature,
Yeah.
And so he realizes that and tries his best to keep him around to begin with, because he does realize that it is a positive impact he has on him, and he realizes that obviously he does a lot for him as well, and he is obviously he ends up being very thankful.
By the way, one of the few recastings in the MCU, I love how they dealt with it, because they make a big deal about it's Rhodey entering the room, so first of all, you realise who it is, and then his first words to Tony make sense for the scene, but they also make sense to the viewer. He says, look, it's me, I'm here, deal with it, let's move on, drop it. He's saying, look, it's
done very well.
Yeah, I cracked a big smile at that scene, because that's just like, directly talking to the audience in a way that still makes sense in the film. It was so well done.
I think they're both very good actors as well. I think either one could have pulled off very well.
Yeah, definitely.
Where it seems like they're very different actors in that. I don't know their names. I can't remember the top of my head. But the first guy is very much like there is a bit of like a silliness to him, I guess, and he almost like a part of him had been sort of, I guess, corrupted by Tony a little bit, and so like there was that nature of being like very sort of silly back and forth, whereas like the newer Rhodey, his sort of the way he does Rhodey is very much like he's very, very serious a lot of the time, and it's very much like I deal with problems kind of person, but then has that laid back nature when he knows, okay, this is the time to relax, blah, blah. Like he has a very strong sense of he shows, or at least shows, he has a very strong sense of like when it's time to when it's time to party and when it's time to be serious. So,
I do like
and then also being able to banter with Tony in those situations.
I just love that when they don't cover it up. So it's very clear that Rhodey from the first movie is a little bit different to Rhodey in the second movie. It's not like they're trying to cover it up and be like, oh no, he's the same. It's like, if he looks different because he is a different person, he's also going to act a little bit different, and that's okay, and that can be part of a movie, and that's how you really move it forwards.
Because he's a lot more tied up in Tony Stark stuff in this film than he is in the first one, a lot more.
Yeah. It's great. I love the part in the courtroom where he hacks the screen to show. He's like, "Oh, we're going for transparency. Here's transparency. Look, I've got more information about this ship than you do. Here's all of their mechs. Here's what they're doing, and here's all of their failings. Oh, look, it's Justin Hammer. All of this kind of stuff. Yeah. And Justin Hammer, who's trying to be, imitation Tony Stark. He can't even turn off a TV in time, which really shows his ineptitude.
And he immediately loses his cool as well, which is another part in that, which is very much like he's very clearly in no way like Tony.
Yeah.
Tony is very cool under pressure and constantly, he has like a quick comeback every time. Yeah. Whereas every time he said something to Justin Hammer, he was just like, Yeah. So,
I think he had one
very
comeback
good.
one time, and it wasn't even that good.
Yeah.
Yeah. I didn't write it down sadly, but yeah, that courtroom scene I think just showed you everything you needed to know very quickly.
Yeah. It was very well, and it brings about the idea of being like, well, where does Iron Man exist in this world? Like, how does it exist in this world?
Yeah.
And it's a very good place to set it up and be like, oh, there is a bit of animosity towards it.
And I think it's good,
which is very interesting.
I think it's good that they started with Iron Man in that way, at least as far as publicly revealed, figures. Because if they did Thor first, then Iron Man exists in a world where Thor is known to be a thing, and therefore it's harder to argue against Iron Man because it's like, we might need him. Thor turns evil.
Exactly. Set up what is feasible before what is high fantasy.
Yeah. And that's like
because
how
Thor is about a high fantasy in the MCU as it gets.
Yeah, and that's like,
well, that and Doctor Strange.
Well, I was gonna say Thor is like a forerunner, to like more mystical elements that they introduce. I think in Phase 3, or at least late Phase 2, is Doctor Strange. I think it is Phase 3.
Yeah.
And that really gets into some real mystical stuff. And I like how with the MCU, the way they rolled out was like realism with a tinge of maybe not mysticism, but just like the idea of I don't know. I think Thor in there is. You could argue that maybe it should have gone realism to more like a world of superheroes to then include Thor with Doctor Strange, but I think realistically people would have needed Thor in Avengers. But I think it's a clever rollout the way they did it, so that they could explore these stories one at a time.
It's still done really well within like the stories of like separate films and stuff as well. Like you think as far up as Far From Home, and how everything was set up in that movie to be set up with the technology in the universe, so it was feasible that it was done this way. They changed how the villain worked, but like they kept how he worked fundamentally, but changed like the inner workings of everything. So it was more in universe, and it blends so much better together with the story that's already been set up for the predecessor movies.
I think the Marvel Cinematic Universe, the way they built it out, gave them a really unique opportunity to be like, what are the stories we want to tell that are more self-contained, and then what are the stories that we want to tell in more of a unique world than we've done before, where it's already been built out in different ways than happened in the comics. So yeah, I think that was really cool, because Spider-Man was pretty early as far as the Marvel comic universe was. I think the X-Men already existed, and I think Iron Man existed. I'm trying to think.
X-Men was
Fantastic
very
Four. Spider-Man appeared in Fantastic Four. That's how he started. Comic trivia, at least as long as I'm not wrong, and that would be really embarrassing.
But so I'm gonna bring back to the courtroom.
Yes.
Again, because there is a point I want to make, which I mentioned to you already, but I wanted to mention the 37th president of the United States, Richard Nixon.
Naturally.
Because Tony Stark does a very specific pose, which is what Richard Nixon does. It's very famous pictures of him doing the double peace sign pose in front of people, which I thought was very interesting. And so I did a little bit of research, and something that Tony Stark says is very much like peace in our time, stuff like that. And it's very similar to some stuff Richard Nixon said while he was president, about peace with honor, which I thought was very interesting, and that the parallels being drawn there was very interesting, I think, because he does it at the end, the very end as well, doesn't he? The whole idea being, peace in our time, and him almost being the person that is going to get that peace, which is very similar to how I guess Richard Nixon treated his stuff. But I thought it was just an interesting point to bring up.
He has
warranted research.
He does seem to have a very Republican view of peace. He's less about profiting off of it than he was in the first movie. The guy who holds all the sticks is the guy who can make peace happen. No, that's good for the guy selling the sticks. He's less that direction, but he still does hold on to this notion of, I've privatized world peace, because I made this suit, which he doesn't see as a weapon, we know at this point, but he knows he's like an enforcer.
He's as a shield.
Yeah. He knows he's an enforcer, and he believes America should be at the front of it. I think it's very... I don't know, I'm not an expert in American politics and the nitty-gritty of it, but it does seem quite Republican to me. I think he even said something to Pepper at one point about, I don't want to hear about the liberal agenda right now, or something like that, which was an offhand remark. And I think...
Richard Nixon was Republican as well, so it does tie in.
Yeah, so I thought that would be interesting to bring up in point about. But before this podcast, I was talking about, in general outline and what we should do for structure and if we should change anything up from last week. And Reese brought up the fact that I will be bringing up the 37th President of the United States at one point. I was like, what? Okay. I look forward to hearing how that happens. It was great.
Yeah, that was made the point. It's a very famous picture, and so I saw him do it, and I'm like, oh shit, that's Richard Nixon, I think.
Isn't Nixon also known for having been an alcoholic?
He was impeached. He was impeached as well. He was impeached for obstruction of justice and abuse of power.
Also, I was thinking during this movie, I don't remember what triggered it, but I was thinking about how Tony does go on a bit of a journey from being, I guess the courtroom triggered it, from being, no, I've privatized world peace, it falls on me, I'm going to protect you, to civil war, where he's the one who's going, no, guys, they're right, we need to be accountable. We should probably, and I guess that'll be a whole thing later down the line as to who we agree with. But
it comes down to his whole strong sense of responsibility, which is used heavily in the first film, and it is to a degree used in this film as well. Because even though he does obviously that up until obviously the later part of the film where his sort of view of his father has changed somewhat, he believes that he has to take responsibility because it's part of his family, which is the reason why Ivan is always like trying to attack family, and so he sees himself as being, I am the only Stark, so I need to defend what is Stark.
Yeah, I thought he hated his dad more. I don't know if that comes later on. I thought he had a real issue with his dad.
I think it's he does have his issues with his father, but obviously this is the sort of the starting point of breaking it up, and the fact that he literally turns on and goes, "Thanks, Dad," at one point when he works out obviously how to make it. I fucking love that scene as well, because Jarvis very openly goes, "It's impossible to make this," and then Tony's like, "All right," and just carries on. Like, that's his character to a nutshell.
Yeah.
You can tell him something's impossible, but he'll still find a way. That's entirely his character, which I thought was fantastic.
Yeah.
Like, it was almost like a switch. Like, he was suddenly back to being him.
Well, I guess he knows how things.
Fantastic.
He knows how things work. He knows how things break. He knows the limit of what his AI is able to think of, and he made his AI. So if the AI tells him it's impossible,
he made it.
It just means that like his previous way of thinking.
Improbable.
Yeah. I wrote down here. So we go back into Tony's lab, and guess who we see? Little arm robot, the little fire extinguisher robot. He's still working away. He still exists. He's still trying his best.
He's still doing.
That's something you missed from not having seen the first movie before the second. I didn't really give a shit about that particular little bit, but now I'm like, yay, he's back. He's doing his thing.
Doing his thing.
And Tony kept him around.
Visibility.
Yeah, he's trying his best. I feel like he threw Pepper into the CEO role is a bit of a mirror again to the way he threw her into heart surgery, where she's just coming down to talk to him about important shit, and he's like, he hijacks the conversation and he immediately turns it into, no, I need you to do this, which I thought was cool. Sorry, I just thought I heard a noise. I thought, yeah. I mean, it's not entirely the same because he calls her down, I guess, in the first one, but it was just very reminiscent of that scene, and I'm putting it on my little list of notes.
It isn't, and I'm gonna say it's not parallel.
Okay.
Because how the two characters interact. In the first one, it's very respectful. Oh, this is my boss. I'm going to talk to him very respectfully. In the second one, it's almost like a couple arguing. Because of the way she's like, no, you're doing dumb shit. You need to stop doing this. And he's like, no, it's fine. Just take the company. And she's like, no. And he's hanging up the picture as well. And she's like, no, you're not taking that down. And he's like it's more of a lover's quarrel rather than a boss and his assistant.
I guess fair enough.
It's massive development from it's still the same conversation. very much so, it's still the same conversation, which I think is important because it's set the same way. The conversation's the same.
That's what I mean, though. I think it's still kind of a parallel, but in a way that shows
it is a parallel
the growth of that relationship.
Yes, for sure.
As long as I'm not grasping at straws here and being like, no, it's definitely a parallel. I like my parallels.
It's shot in a very similar way as well, where it's on Tony and then it pans over to her being walking in. You know, it's very much set up that way.
There's a lot of
him playing music, and then he pauses the music. You know.
Yeah, there's a lot of people talking over each other in this movie, isn't there? Like, that must be quite hard to act. Can you imagine?
It's all based on direction. I mean, Jon Favreau did the first one and this one as well, and I think he did a fantastic job with his direction, honestly.
Yeah. I think it was done very well. So we're maybe like a third of the way down my list of notes, and I've put already bored of Mr. Whippy.
Already bored of Mr. Whippy.
Yeah, I wasn't entirely.
You see the part where he did the thing on the racetrack where you're spinning him around, skipping forward. Oh, great seeing that.
I think when people talk about this movie, that's one of their biggest hang-ups. Is he's just a bit much, isn't he? At least when he's got his whips.
I think that was by design, because they wouldn't have put so much time with Justin Hammer else. If they were planning on fleshing him out as a proper deep character, they wouldn't have done the whole thing with Justin Hammer.
Sure.
Or he would have been less of a character that was there. You know, he wouldn't have been as prominent as he was. And so the idea is that it's almost two contrasting forces. This is very aggressively charismatic, trying to be charismatic person. You know the way he interacts with his assistant and stuff. Put your head in there. Go on. No, you can't put your head in there, can you?
Oh god, he's such a douchebag.
He's such a douchebag. Yeah, that's the point. And then it's and then there's Vanko, and you're almost at this point where you're like, I want him to kill him.
Yeah,
you know?
Absolutely.
Which then you start, and then passively you start rooting for the villain.
I guess so.
The entire point of this villain. The entire point of this villain. He's not supposed to be interesting. He's supposed to be a character where it's like, okay, maybe he is some. It's like the theory where everyone's like Thanos was right. It's like that kind of deal where it's like you root for the villain a little bit because this guy's an asshole and he's a bigger asshole than this asshole, you know. And you want something to happen there.
I wouldn't say I was really rooting for him.
Maybe not as strongly as it's been done in other medium, in other movies. But there is that sense of like, this guy's an idiot and he's gonna die to this guy, and you kind of obviously want that, you know.
Yeah.
To a degree. But yeah, with his character, he definitely. I think that the point wasn't to fully flesh him out. I think it was almost to affect Tony. The entire point of him was to affect him and how he related to Tony. That was the entire premise of it. Everything else was just, you know, gravy.
His whips weren't his real weapon.
It's a superhero movie, so there has to be fighting and so on and so forth, which I have a point about as well. But
I was just gonna say, his whips aren't his real weapon. His wits are. Like,
exactly.
The way he outsmarts. He knows how the public will react to Tony failing. It doesn't matter that he doesn't kill Tony. What matters is that he endangered Tony live on TV.
If you make God bleed, they will stop believing.
Exactly.
It's the quote.
Although when he was chopping up the car, I thought, is the scene where he's chopping up the car supposed to be this hilarious? Because they're screaming and screaming away, and I was just cackling because it looks so dumb.
Yeah, it's the action scenes in this film. There's not very many.
No, I was going to say it's not very action heavy, is it? But the action scene at the end is amazing. I will say that much.
It's very good. It's very fast, though. It's very fast. There's like a lot of fighting. He turns up. There's a bit more fighting, and then it's done. Like, which I think is the point. I think it's very much the point, and the focus isn't the fighting. The focus is the interactions. And it's a superhero movie, so it has to have fighting in it.
I think I remember that being a major criticism of this film back when it was, you know, relevant, or I guess not relevant, but, you know, current. Is people were saying it's way too much Tony Stark and not enough Iron Man. I remember hearing that. Not necessarily saying that's particularly right or true, because I think it was still interesting, but I get where they're coming from in a sense. But I do think they kind of made up for the previous movie's final battle with this movie's final battle. I think
the final battle in that one is fine because it's the idea in the first one. The idea is that he's running off, he ran on fumes almost. Like this is a Tony Stark that is like he's beaten down at his worst almost. And so again, like the fight scenes in Iron Man, there's all this technology being stuff, but the entire point is the people in the technology, and that makes more sense. It's because the reason that there's a lot of fighting in these is superhero. That's literally why there's fighting, is because it's it is what it is. It's on the tin, and so the whole idea of it is more to do with the people, I think, and the minds, and like the mind games and the trickery and the effect that certain actions have, and because at one point Tony Steen is shown to be an idiot, an asshole, a dumbass, the way he is at the party, which it's like, this is an Iron Man, this is my Iron Man, I know, so
yeah. I guess. Can we talk about one of the most important developments in this movie, real quick, not to segue away abruptly? The news is finally widescreen.
Yeah. Finally widescreen. There you go. We did
And
it,
I think this really signifies the fact that the world has looked at Tony Stark and gone, oh, we need to develop our technologies to keep up with him. It's really indicative of the rest of the movie as a whole. Okay, I'm going to shut up now. I'm going to stop with that fuss, but I appreciate you for laughing because I'm sure nobody else did. Am I right in thinking that the Prison Break was a bit shit? It kind of...
Yes. It was very shit and pointless, which it was organised by Justin Hammer, so it makes sense.
Well, that might be a bit too forgiving, but sure.
I think it's literally down to the whole, like, everything that's executed by Justin Hammer, which Tony Stark pokes fun at him, all that stuff like that, but obviously with the bunker buster missiles immediately just doing nothing.
Yeah, that was great.
Everything he does is really crap.
Yeah.
And so even like something as as high stakes as a Prison Break is even boring.
I wouldn't be so forgiving. I would say that's more a fault of the movie as a whole, in that they needed to get character from scene A to scene B, and they didn't want to spend a lot of time suddenly going, let's concentrate on making a Prison Break happen. I think it's a flaw in the movie and not so much a metaphor for Justin Hammer as a whole.
I think because of the lack of action in the movie, there needed to be more action, and so they added what would be an action scene where it could have very easily been like a cut and run kind of deal, and then suddenly he's coming out of the van, with Justin Hammer. I think that would have cut out a lot of faff. That was the prison scene, but obviously with inquiring mind like myself, who thinks there's a reason for everything,
just got to know.
I think it is a case. It could be perceived as a case of Justin Hammer is so inept when it comes to trying to do these things that
Yeah.
I didn't see the point of the fucking bomb. Like, why the bomb? It's so
I think
dumb.
it
Doesn't make sense. Like, yes, it triggers the fire alarm. They could have just triggered the fire alarm.
No, they briefly mentioned later on that everyone thought he was dead. I think the bomb was to make people think he died in the explosion, but would they really be that dumb to just assume that, that's lucky, nobody escaped, he just died, and there's no body parts.
I think there's previous parts where Tony's being like, oh yeah, you're gonna, get death for this because of what you've done. I think it's a case of more like death sentence rather than...
Sure.
That security on that, in the whole prison was a bit shit though, because he walks down a corridor, down some stairs, and he's outside. Like,
yeah.
What?
yeah, it's not great, is it?
Like maybe there's a cut somewhere there that's like, oh, actually, he travels all the way through, and then
it's like half an hour.
it's like a half hour uncut like thing, which is following Mickey Rourke because he just wanders through with his Russian accent. Anyway.
So after the prison break, that's when we really cut to the part where Tony Stark's getting drunk. By the way, Why did... Because we haven't really talked about Black Widow, Natalie Romanoff? Natasha Romanoff? I forget which one her real name is.
Natasha Romanoff.
Natasha Romanoff. I'm not a real comics fan, I'm a sham. But why... Did she have a reason for telling him to basically go YOLO mode? Because she was the one who told him that. She was like, hey, if it was my last night on Earth, I'd do whatever I wanted, man. And then she walks off and you're like, oh, this is Black Widow. She must be, calculating something there. But no, she just...
Yeah, it is a bit of interesting to think about that. It just feels like she's inciting chaos for the sake of chaos.
Yeah, like it didn't further any plan. Like, I guess maybe if you really wanted to grasp at straws, you could argue that it was something that ended up with Tony, coming to terms with the fact that he was dying. But no, I don't think I can really even be bothered to try and make that argument, to be honest. I think it was maybe just a weak point in the movie. Again, from A to B.
I think it's just a case of just inciting, not something that Tony would advocately do, because obviously he is a very smart individual, and so it's not something he would just be like, all right, fuck it, let's go crazy. I mean, well, his version of going crazy is, driving the Formula 1 car, which I think leads into his whole thing of he's dying, so he's trying to do all he can.
Oh, you just reminded me about that. Sorry.
Yeah.
I'm glad you reminded me of the race.
He's giving away the older stuff as well, isn't he? So.
Yeah. You reminded me, The Dark Knight Returns. Have you ever seen or read that? It's a comic, but it's also an animated Batman movie. It's...
I don't think I have.
It's about Batman being an old man who can't be Batman anymore, Bruce Wayne. So I think, if I remember right, it's been a while, but I think that story opens with him taking part in, I don't know if it's Formula 1 or some other kind of really high-speed race, and he's basically... He knows he's going to die soon because he's really old, and he's just trying to feel something again. And this reminded me of that. They're both billionaires. They both got nothing to lose. Maybe Tony's not trying to feel something again, but or you could argue maybe he is.
Like
but
experiences with him,
Yeah, I just thought it was kind of a cool thing to note. A similarity to another piece of fiction. Intertextuality.
Like, oh, I own. Yes. Well, because he walks out and he's like, I own this, but I've never driven it. And it's like, right, so he's going to drive it before it's cool. And then obviously when he donates everything, he's getting rid of everything. Obviously makes Pepper CEO as part of that as well. Like, it's all a case of, this is my last will almost.
I would also say him making Pepper CEO is, he loves her, and he does believe in her ability to lead the company. That's not 100% just, I'm dying, throw it away. He thinks she deserves this and she earned this.
So it's a case of, you are my benefactor almost. Yeah. Like, when I'm gone, it's yours kind of deal.
Yeah.
Because that's his family.
Yeah. And he does drunkenly tell her he loves her very embarrassingly at the party, which is a very clever segue back to the party, because I accidentally brought us away from the party. I was also going to say we need to talk about give me a fat beat to beat my buddy's ass to. And he just cracks up at the end of that line. I think that was Robert Downey Jr. laughing there. I don't think that was Tony Stark.
Yeah, there was a bit of him coming out there. Yeah. I think it fit though. Like, he was drunk.
Yeah. Of course, I think that's why they used that take. But I don't believe the laugh was in the script. Yeah.
God, that's pretty fun to say though. Also, that beat my buddy's ass too.
Also, I think there was
which ends up being Daft Punk.
Yeah. I think there was more humour in this film than in Iron Man 1. I think this is really the beginnings of the kind of incorporation of so much humour into the MCU, which we see in every MCU movie now. Sure. There were so many funny moments.
The first one was so much more. The first one was so much more serious because of what it was. The whole thing was Tony taking responsibility for horrible things. Yeah. So he was very serious.
That being said, I did also write down that this movie feels tonally all over the place, so maybe it wasn't particularly done as good as it could have been.
I think it. I mean, to a degree, it is a little bit. So I think it's just because there's a lot of moving parts.
Yeah.
And so this was the point where they were trying to like what it was. It wasn't just about Iron Man anymore. It was about Shield and about the characters within Shield.
Yeah, they were really building something.
And they did some more stuff with Happy. They fleshed out Happy. They did more stuff with Pepper as well.
Mm-hmm.
And then obviously with Justin Hammer, and there was just a lot more moving parts, and I think it worked well for how much was going on. But there are points where it's a little like, a little messy.
Taking on a lot there. But I think you can immediately see that because of Iron Man 1's success, a lot of things were included in Iron Man 2, like here's Captain America's shield, and then post-credit scene, with Thor's hammer. It's like Iron Man 1, they were already suggesting that, but because of how it feels like that gave them the go-ahead to be like, all right, we're starting some stuff now. Let's start putting some stuff in the next movie to show that we're really
almost
getting there.
Like if you want to see more, and then people were like, the first film was received so well, so they were like, okay, cool, let's ramp it up then, and then for now.
Yeah,
it was cool because it's like such subtle link-ins to everything. Though it's not like in your face. I mean, maybe the joke about Cap's shield is a little bit in your face.
I think that's in your face for the purpose of being in your face, though.
It's the purpose of Tony being a dick, and it alludes to their future relationship as well, which I think is very interesting. The whole way he treats the shield. And obviously with Thor's hammer and stuff. But something that isn't messy, I'll bring up, is some of the music that's done in this film. And it lends itself to the idea of how similar Whiplash and Iron Man are, in that, although obviously their characters, Vanko and Stark. There's a point where it's a constant shot back and forth between the two characters, and it intermingles both of their themes fantastically well. It's almost like, so obviously you've got like the dun 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 dun, like the Iron Man theme, and then it transitions directly into Vanko's theme, which is similar, very much more sinister. It's very much more bassy, and it is a lot more sinister, and then flips back again to the the more triumphant Iron Man theme, and then back again. And I think it's very interesting because it shows how well it shows the similarity of the characters, and also it just blends them together very well. How well it blends together, and how it lends itself to the idea that the characters are a lot more similar than obviously just this one's bad, this one's good.
I'm annoyed at myself for not catching that, because I pride myself on how much I love soundtracks and their symbolism in movies. Well, maybe not movies, but just everything.
I think I would put that down more to the music is very soul. The themes are very soul. That it's literally just like two instruments each. Like it's almost like throwaway music. But the way it's done is very fantastic.
Did you catch who scored this one? Was it Ramin Djawadi again?
I didn't see that. No.
It sounded like him, at least as far as sounding similar to the first movie.
Iron Man 2.
I never did end up looking it up.
It was not. It was someone else. It was John Debney.
Okay, I've never heard of him. Well, this is when he turns out to be a massive composer. But at least in the circles of things I've seen and played, I've never heard of him. But he did a very good job of making it cohesive with the first movie. So very well done.
I think he definitely expanded on it a little bit, and then included the idea of what it was fantastically done. So props to that guy for that. Very good, very very good. Was there anything else you want to say about this part of the movie before I move along? Because I don't want to keep. That part would have been the back between. It would have been the part where he was being chased by all the drones. Yeah. Because it was the back and forth. Between Iron Man flying around and then back to.
Oh, gotcha. So during the final fight, I might go back and look at that and see if I can pick that out.
I think it was there. I'm trying to remember specifically, but yeah.
God, that was such a good final fight. No, I really enjoyed that. I was like, that redeemed any issues in the movie I had. Just him and I guess we'll talk about it now. Him and Rhodey fighting back to back at the end there was super. Like it was such a good show of bonding and friendship, and also the power they have when they fight together. Yeah. Like they're in sync.
Rinsing those drones.
Yeah, and I'm not the kind of guy who loves the aesthetic of mechs and robots and bullets and all that kind of stuff. That's not typically me, but it was in this movie because that was fucking cool.
Oh yeah. I'm gonna bring it back to music again. So in that final fight, when the drones are dropping down, there is a parts of it where it's like in tune with beats, which I think is pretty cool. But it's almost like an even slower version of Whiplash's theme. It seems like it's very much like drum, 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 and then music stops for the entire fight, so that when he does his cool laser beam trick, there's just silence, and I think that's fantastic.
Yeah.
It's almost like the calm before the storm as well, because yes, you've just fought all these robots, but the big boys coming. It's very much like it's like a cool, we did it, but also it's like alludes to the calm before the storm as well.
Yeah, yeah, I like that. Yeah, it's good when they allow the movie time to be like, okay, no, the movie speaks for itself here. You don't need a soundtrack part for this part. I think that's a very important part of scoring a movie. Not that I'm in any way, I have like no musical talent in my body, so I'm really not equipped to talk about music. But just from an observation standpoint, I think it seems obvious to me at least that it's just as important to know when to be quiet as it is to be loud. Because they're both important. There you go, that's the extent of my musical knowledge right there. This is not a podcast where I talk about musical things, I guess. When he says duck and he does the laser thing, imagine if Roddy hadn't fucking ducked. He'd be cut in half.
There's a trust there though, isn't there?
I know,
like,
and that's
the point. It's like he immediately does. It's like boom, he's down.
Yeah, I think that's one of the main points that shows the bond that they have, or the bond that they're forging in that fight. And I think even though like he was joking earlier about how Iron Man doesn't have a psychic, isn't it in that fight where he's like, I forget what he says, but it's something along the lines of, "Hey partner," like "Come on partner," or something like that. It might be fairly fundamental stuff, but it's important stuff nonetheless, and I appreciated it when I saw it.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, for sure.
Also, before I completely move away from the final fight there, before we get to that point where he's fighting side by side with Rhodey, that chase where Rhodey has no control of his suit and he's leading with Jones and Rhodey on a chase around the city, that was really well shot, or animated, however they did it. That was really well done.
Yeah. That does segue into something I was going to say, but just I'll let you finish your point.
I was just going to say one last thing is Rhodey, I think it shows a real strength of character that he didn't come across terrified. I think most people in that situation would have been terrified. They have no control over what they're doing. And it's still their body parts that are moving, so it still feels like they're the one that's doing it. That's pretty horrifying, but he remained calm and calculated and communicative.
It lends itself to what he does as well, because he's a pilot.
Yeah.
That's the point. He's a pilot, and he has been for a while. I mean, he's a colonel, so I imagine he's been doing it for a while.
Yeah.
And I mean, even in the first film, take that for context, like he's teaching people how to fly. So obviously he is a seasoned, person who can fly, and he has somewhat weight when it comes to that part of the military as well. So.
Yeah. Yeah, it's just like he's like, oh, I've got a lock on you, Tony. Watch out! It's not like, oh God, It very much shows his experience.
Yeah, for sure. I was going to bring up the practical and CGI elements of the film.
Okay.
Because there were a lot more practical stuff in this film than there was CG, which I very much appreciate. Some of the Iron Man suits were real, like the helmets and stuff. Some of it
really?
was
cool.
Very, very real. Like,
I didn't even notice this stuff.
It was very real. Especially the scene, because you could tell there was like wires and shit. I don't know if that was just part of it was supposed to be as like it's part of the suit, or if it was something that was maybe not supposed to be seen. But when they had the face up and they were talking, the helmet on, and there was very clearly like it was bolts and like the stuff was moving. Like you could physically see that it was practical, which is really cool.
I wonder if that's in response to the first film. I remember hearing criticism of the first film of how they CGI'd the faces into the helmet and it looked really weird.
Yeah, it did look weird, and they definitely did that at points with this one.
Yeah,
but less so, because there was I think if anything was CG, it maybe like the CG it probably was, because it's less like contrast there going on. But the actual helmet, very practical, you can tell, definitely.
I could tell you one. Yeah, I could tell you one thing that was definitely CG, and that was the Formula 1 race. Those cars, obviously, I guess it would be a huge budget to get the real cars and stuff, but especially the point where Whiplash is doing his thing, obviously that's not practical effects, but
some of it was practical though.
Oh really?
Some of it, the way, so the flipping of the cars and stuff was definitely practical, because that's not something you CG. It looked far too real to be CG.
Well, I was going to say there was a point when a guy is getting flipped in a car. Maybe it's just a guy who's CG, but he looks weird. He is definitely not real. Like when
Yeah.
it's
That probably was the case. Yeah.
yeah.
The cars themselves were very obviously like they probably weren't actual full cars because those things are expensive.
Yeah.
But like there was certain parts like when he'd make a cut on some of them, it was very clearly CG as well.
Yeah.
And so it looked a bit funky.
Oh, the car
But
as well. When he was cutting the
throwing-
car up, that looked a bit weird.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Like when he was cutting it. But apart from that, like the general explosions were all very practical. Were done very well. Like it made sense at the time rather than weird explosions in Iron Man 1. Like the cars flipping and stuff, all very practical, very very real. I think.
I'm gonna have to try and develop an eye for this kind of thing because I definitely don't have it right now.
It is just watching the films. You'll see it honestly, and as long as you know what you're looking for. But I just found myself
lighting.
just like whenever the Iron Man suit was on screen, I was just looking basically for everything. And I do feel like even though I just said the rest of the suit was probably CGI, there were points where it did look real. Like it didn't look like it was a disembodied head in a suit, you know?
Yeah.
When Tony was just walking around with just a suit and no helmet. It looked real and it was very well done. I think it looked fantastic. Props.
Yeah. Very well done. Can you imagine trying to make something like that? The amount of work that must go into it. There's a
Oh yeah, for sure.
There's a YouTube channel actually, and I forget their name. I should probably look it up. But do you know who I'm on about? But it's these people who I don't know if they work on movies themselves. I think they do, and they kind of watch movies and they go over practical and CGI effects and stuff that's done really badly and stuff that's done well.
What I'm on about it's like Wired or something, and they get people.
Is it Wired?
Stuff. Like, I think it's Wired or something, but I know what you're on about
But-
because the last one I watched was about Henry Cavill talking about the Witcher stuff.
Corridor Crew? I think
there's-
Corridor Digital it might be. I'm on about.
Sorry.
Corridor Digital?
Right.
I should
I
definitely.
know what kind of thing you're on about because I've seen us. Was talking the direction for fighting for that.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Well, either way, there's definitely YouTubers out there like that. Maybe I should watch some more of that.
Sorry, Karen.
I was just saying, maybe I should watch more of
I
that
mean,
to get myself
it would
educated a bit more.
It would definitely help you like have an eye for things because like they would describe like certain things, how things are done, blah blah blah. Which bringing it back to that, something that I find stupidly interesting. Henry Cavill as Geralt is using like most of the sword CG.
Oh really?
When he's like slicing stuff, it's like a fractured sword that's about like 3 or 4 inches from the hilt, and then everything else is CG. The entire rest of the blade is CG.
I was gonna say, I guess that explains.
Themselves are actually swords, but that's how they do like the fight scenes and stuff to actually like impale people.
Yeah, I guess. And he swings it around so easily, but then he's Henry Cavill. He could probably swing around a real sword that easily too, because he is a man of steel.
He is a man of steel. He is very much a man of
We
steel.
might get to that one day. Man of steel.
Unless he's fighting monsters, which. But anyway.
He's a man of silver. Yeah, sorry, you cut out there on
He is a
screen.
man of silver.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Back to Iron Man now.
Back to Iron Man, yeah. He's made of iron. Yeah. Any more points you have?
I guess just 2 things. Firstly, I didn't remember Tony fixing his heart was such a major part of the movie. I thought it was done fairly quickly. I don't know if he comes up with an even better solution in Iron Man 3 or if this is the extent of it. I can't
think
really remember.
that's what I say. I think he just improves upon it. He pretty much uses it in 3, I think.
Yeah.
If I remember correctly. I think what 3 is my least knowledge in terms of the episode.
Yeah.
Apart from Winter Soldier, which I've probably not watched. Guilty, because we reached that one.
Oh.
Film that I haven't watched. So first time in impression.
Oh, and that'll be one that I have seen and you have not.
Exactly.
Not that it will really
So-
matter much because I don't remember much about it anyway. I think I might have seen that one twice though. I think I have seen that
I've
one
heard
twice.
some things about it, which I'm interested, but yeah.
And the final point I was gonna make is the relationship between Tony and Pepper is just so entertaining every time it happens. I loved the phone conversation at the end where she's listening in and she finds out that Tony was dying, and he's like, "Oh no, I was gonna tell you, I was gonna make you an omelette and then tell you." Like she's yelling at him for not telling her. It's so entertaining to watch. I love it.
Yeah, for sure.
As much as you may be able to find issue with Gwyneth Paltrow. The characters are very interesting.
She's
that's a whole different discussion.
Holy crap!
Yeah.
If you don't know what we're talking about, look for anything related to Goop, and you'll know. You'll know.
And if you like actors knowing which movies they've been in, Gwyneth isn't for you. She doesn't know whether she's been in any of those superhero movies. I forget what the quote was, but it was something like that. She was like, "Oh, Avengers, have I been in that one?" And people were like, "Come on, are you kidding me?"
Good lord. Good lord.
But I guess while we're talking about actors, we should also bring up the fact that a lot of people think Robert Downey Jr. is perfect for Tony Stark because of his past with... I think he has parental issues and he had a history of drug misuse and all this kind of stuff, so... you can say what you want about actors and how much they have to act and how much of it is real, but I think whatever Robert Downey Jr. is doing on screen, it's really well done. And I think if it's entirely acted or if it comes from a real place and he's showing that emotion on screen, either way it's equally impressive, and I think he's great as Iron Man, and he seems like a pretty good dude as well. I don't know if something's immediately going to come out now and I'm going to regret these words a year from now. I hope not, but he seems like a genuinely good dude, so like me some Robert Downey.
Yeah, from what I've seen, he's dude, which is nice.
Yeah.
But anything can fucking happen. One of my favourite movies is Tainted, the fact that has Kevin Spacey in it, so...
Oh yeah. We're probably going to come...
Still a good film, though. I still enjoy it.
That's something I've been thinking about a lot of this movie podcast, is we're going to come across movies where they have actors in them that are really problematic, or issues in them which have been handled better, like they've aged badly, and we should probably tackle them as they come, but...
Yeah.
It's definitely
I think it would be a case of acknowledging it straight away.
Yeah.
And then moving on. Like, it's a case of, like, art from the artist kind of deal, you know? Which is a little bit tougher for actors, I think.
I think it's actually easier for actors than it is for musicians and stuff like that, because musicians are talking about their direct experiences, whereas actors, you can separate it a bit better because they're portraying a character, and you can pretend that Pepper Potts isn't Gwyneth Paltrow, for instance.
Yeah. I mean, when it's a movie, you can kind of get what the character is from, which is why I don't really have issue with that person being in that film. Which I think it's fine. That's the beauty of acting, though, isn't it? It's someone becoming a different. So I think it's very interesting. I am talking about Baby.
You talk about what? Sorry, you cut out there.
I'm talking about Baby Driver.
Ah.
If you want a movie for good music and the aesthetics all around it, you will not find one greater.
Well,
fantastic. It's got music ranging from like the 60s to the 80s. It's so good.
We'll definitely do Baby Driver.
60s to the 90s, I believe. Yes. Yeah. I will be fucking gushing the entire time, and I'm not talking about my mouth.
Oh god.
Yeah, that's staying in. But yeah, I think it would be interesting to maybe dive into, because Edgar Wright is one of my favorite directors as well. So I think it'd be interesting for us to dive into that kind of deal and be like, this is a director I really like, and these are the films that they've made, which is why I really like them.
So Reese.
Yeah. Yes.
To wrap up on Iron Man 2, how would you rate it on a scale of Tony's arm lasers to Justin Hammer's dud missile? What would you... I don't like giving number ratings, but just general impressions, like...
I would rank it War Machine's Minigun.
That's a good one. I think I agree with you there. It's cool.
No. I rank it doing the skip forward with his whips.
Oh dear, I think that's a lesser ranking than the machine gun. I think you've just knocked it down a peg there.
No, I did like it, and I think it was more a character study than an action film.
Yeah, absolutely.
To being very much interesting, because it's about intelligent people doing not so intelligent things for what they think is intelligent reason.
Sure.
Yeah.
I think I'm not going to say anything quite as eloquent as you. I was just going to say I think it's a good movie, but it ain't a great one. I think it's not as good as Iron Man 1.
There are issues.
But I still enjoyed my time watching it. And if we could have more lines like "I need a fat beat to beat my buddy's ass to," that would be fantastic because that made my day.
Oh, it's so good. Right. I think I want to bring up as well that just reminded me of that scene. It is played in such a comedic way, even down to the sound effects, because there's that point where they're just punching each other back and forth, and it sounds like a frying pan, which is very stereotypically a very comedic sound.
Yeah.
Which I think was fantastic. So it was like ping, ping, ping. Like,
it's quite a serious scene, but at least until the point where the music cuts out, it's quite comedically done. And I think, not to get back into analysis territory, but that's kind of indicative of Tony as a human being as well, how darker things are veiled behind a line of comedy and humour, which I've talked about in a previous episode. But
for sure.
we could do analysis all day, and we're not going to. We're going to talk about how the fact that next week's movie is 4. That's the next one in Phase 1 of MCU, and I'm very much looking forward to that one because that's the first one I ever saw. And it is an okay movie. Yeah. I'm more looking forward to talking about it than I am to watching it.
Yeah, for sure. And that one's definitely going to be more of a talk, I think, rather than the actual, because it's very similar to Tony, except obviously he becomes a lot. I think Thor is a lot more changed in that movie than Tony ever does, because Tony always goes back to his Toniness. Whereas Thor very much does change, I think, especially through his movies.
I think in 4 we get so much introduction to really important things for the entirety of the MCU, such as Loki and his path and stuff like that. I think as a movie in its own right, I remember being kind of bored about how it wraps up, and I think Thor himself is one of the weaker points of a movie, and he doesn't necessarily become interesting until he meets the Avengers, and he fits in with them in weird, funky ways, and even better in Ragnarok, but we'll get there.
There's a reason that Chris Hemsworth wasn't interested anymore until Ragnarok came out, and then he realized the direction that Quentin Tarantino wanted, and he was like, "This is awesome! This is so much more fun!" And he agreed to do more stuff.
Yeah. What's the 4/4 movie going to be called? Love and Thunder, I think.
Love and Thunder, which I imagine won't have 4 Thor in it, but it'll have. I imagine he'll be in it, but he won't be the focus.
Oh yeah, isn't that like a?
He'll probably just turn up, because I imagine he's going to be part of Guardian 3.
Yeah.
So that'll be Thor's. That'll be like original Thor's movie from now on. Whereas any further Thors will be the female Thor.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to that.
I am very interested because they're bringing back. Well, I don't know if it'll actually be the same actress or not. I imagine they'll try and do it.
I hope so.
I hope so. It'll be interesting. It'll be nice for her to be
different.
more than just damsel in
distress. Yeah, I know, right?
Once.
Yeah. But we'll get into all of that fun stuff next week.
Looking at you, prequels.
Yeah, and she's not exactly free from it in 4 either. I think she has a few more empowering moments than in the prequels. I don't entirely remember. We'll find out next week.
She has moments of like, oh, I've worked something out, but then she saved it. Okay.
I worked something out, but I'm also a weak, fleshy mortal. Save me, oh handsome fool.
I'm also in trouble. Oh no.
Swoon. Anyway, thank you for joining us, everyone. We will be back next week, as far as I know, to grace your earlobes, which is the wrong place to get grace.
Accentuate.
Sure. Anyway, Reese, play us out.